Now it's time to answer a question submitted by you. Today's answer comes from Chris. Chris asks, is it wrong to be wealthy? Shouldn't I give it all to the poor? Is it wrong to buy a nice house or a new car? All right, Chris, your question comes with a little bit of a premise that's not quite stated, and that is, shouldn't I give it all to the poor? That, to me, implies that you're coming from, at least in my knowledge and experience, a religious background where you feel that if you have wealth, you're obligated to give it charitably. Now, I am a huge proponent of charitable giving, but that doesn't necessarily mean that being wealthy is wrong. For the Christian listeners out there, let's consider the parable that Jesus tells about the talents, where a master gives his servants talents, gives each one of them pools of wealth of varying values, and he leaves. And then the master comes back, and he asks the servants how they did. Well, the first few servants went and invested and multiplied the talents that were given to them, while the last servant took the money, took the talents, buried it in a field, and then dug it up and gave it back without having exercised any stewardship that was expected of him. In response, in the parable, the master takes the money from the servant who didn't do any investing, who didn't do any stewardship other than burying the money out of fear, and gives it to another servant who is very good at investing and managing their money. So this parable goes to show that when we are entrusted with something and we manage it well for God, He will entrust us with more of it. Now, that could be money. It could be other things too. But there are multiple instances I could point out, given enough time in the Bible, where we can see that wealth isn't necessarily wrong. What the Bible does tell us is that the love of money is the root of all evil. So it's not being wealthy per se that's wrong. It's being wealthy for the sake of being wealthy, or being rich for the sake of being rich. Being rich is having a lot of money, while being wealthy is having time. Our goal should be to be wealthy so that we have time, so that we can pursue our calling. If we're coming at this from a faith background, so we can pursue our calling that God gives us. If we are pursuing money for the sake of money, we're putting money in the place where God should live in our life. If we are pursuing wealth so that we can be more of who we already are, if we can be more generous, if we can be a better servant, if we could be a steward who is responsible for more, that's a good thing. Let's jump to the last part of your question, Chris. Is it wrong to have a nice house or a new car? Well, let's consider frugality to answer this particular question. I think frugality has its roots in the Bible. When I developed the definition of frugality as is defined in the HopeFilled Financial Ministry, the intentional practice of prudent economy, I did a great deal of Bible study, prayer, and reflection in order to come up with that. I found about 30 odd some Bible verses in context that support the idea of pursuing intentional practice of prudent economy. It is a disciplined exercise that has its core in love. Now, exercising the intentional practice of prudent economy when it comes to a car purchase or a house purchase could very well result in a quote-unquote nice house or a nice car given your circumstances. But frugality is going to probably limit you from getting the nicest car or the nicest house, because there are other things we're called to do with our wealth beyond that. There can be a fine line between eating well and being a glutton. Similarly, there can be a fine line between managing our money well and buying things that are appropriate and buying things for the sake of just having the nicest thing. Again, it's like the love of money is the root of all evil, the love of visible wealth and the love of really nice things kind of grows out of that. So you also, when you're buying a nice house and buying a car, think about your motive. Is it something that you want to do to keep up with the Joneses? Is it something because you want to look wealthy? Is it something because that's the lifestyle that you want to be portraying? Or is it because you want a nice home to live in that's going to be reliable, or a nice car to drive that you can trust your life with? I know I may have asked more questions than you did with your question, Chris, but I'm hoping that this answer helps